Okay, well, welcome to what I think is our fifth, but may actually be our sixth EAL Quality Mark webinar. We're going to try and finish by about 5:15, and that includes some time for questions at the end. We suggest you watch in active speaker view. It does seem to work better that way. If you've got questions, can you type them into the chat? And at the end, we will try and pick up all of the questions in the chat. If we can't address them all, we will, when we send you details of where the recording is, we'll attach some answers, things we haven't answered. If the connection drops out at any time, we hope it doesn't happen, but it does, but it comes back. So just kind of click on the link again and get back in. So I'm delighted that today we've got people from 3 schools, which means, because normally we have 5, we can give them a little bit longer to talk. Normally we say 10 minutes only, but we're saying, well, you can have 15. And we know that everybody, however perfect they are, does tend to overrun a bit. So we kind of factor that in too. So we've got 3 schools today. We've got Handford Hall in Suffolk, Westbourne Academy, which is very close to Handford Hall. And we have Featherstone High School from Southall, in the London Borough of Ealing. Today's a bit unusual. It's the first time we've ever had 2 secondary schools. We've always been majority primary school before. But it reflects the fact that we are getting more interest from secondary schools. And the secondary schools have done the EAL Quality Mark relatively recently, whereas Handford Hall did it a while ago, and it's just taken us time to have time for Kasha, who we've always wanted to come to join us. So we are going to start today just by saying a bit about the Quality Mark. You see, I haven't updated this slide. It says 5 schools instead of 3. And then I'm going to move on to Kasha. So the EAL Quality Mark, it started because we were doing a big piece of work in Peterborough, where it's fair to say EAL provision was very uneven. And the problem was that nobody knew which the good schools were. And we wanted to send people to the good schools. So we invented this self-assessment tool, which has 3 sections: leadership and managing, teaching and learning, and parents and community. There are 7 criteria in leadership and management, 10 in teaching and learning, and 5 in parents and community. Each one we kind of, you self-assess at bronze, silver, or gold. You then get a visit from an assessor who talks, and I think the talking is probably one of the most important bits to staff, parents, and pupils. We have a walk and look at what's happening in lessons. We're not judging, we're just finding out. We then talk through the self-assessment with the school and decide on what the decision is and what happens next. Whatever level you get at, you get a certificate and a logo to go on your website. We always blog about gold awards. We do blog about others too when we think there's something quite special there. Because the reason we do the Quality Mark now is just to spread good practice, basically. And we feel quite privileged that we get to see it. So we think we ought to share it with people. So I'm going to start then with Kasha Blake from Handford Hall Primary School in Ipswich. Kasha, over to you. Stop sharing.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Kasha Blake. I'm a head teacher at Handford Hall Primary School. I've been a head teacher since 2011 in a very diverse, multicultural urban school in Ipswich. We are actually a feeder school to our colleagues at Westbourne. So Maria is my governor, but she also is working in the school that majority of our children go to. We were the first school in Suffolk that got the Gold Award for EAL. And for us, it was really important to have a professional dialogue about our school practice, about things that we found were really useful, and because they are in practice, our children make accelerated progress, but also look at innovative approaches and things that we found work the quickest and things that we will have to work a little bit longer to have the expected outcome. So I'm going to share a screen with you. I've got myself a timer, so I'm going to be talking to you hopefully for 15 minutes. If you get bored with my accent, my apologies. I'm Polish, so I'm EAL through as well. I'm very proud. And I do understand how EAL learners learn and what barriers they have got. So let me just share the screen with you. And let me just do slideshow. So you've got just one from the beginning. Okay. So like I said, we are a very diverse school right in the center of Ipswich in the most deprived area. We are 2 formentary, so on paper we actually 1 formentary, but we've got such an influx of new EAL students every single day. We work with local authority to extend our PAN, so we've got currently 381 children, and I really hope that from September we will be able to be fully to formentary. Our mobility is really, really high due to where we are situated. So most of the migrant families that arrive in Ipswich, they live in our area, stay with us for a couple of years, they move on. Hence, there's a never dull moment at Handford Hall, people come and go. We are predominantly EAL. We always have been EAL. When I started in 2001, we were Bangladeshi and Pakistani community. Now we have got 29 languages that our children speak, predominantly with our Romani families, which are over 30% now. Our Romanian family, which are around 9%, and then the next group is Portuguese, Kurdish, Bengali, Lithuanian, Polish, and lots of any other, but they are our sort of predominant groups. We are very, very high on the SEND provision, over 38% at the moment. So we just had a new groups of children arriving. So we are really high on SEND. People premium is hardly, it's non-existent really, because most of our migrant families work, so they don't qualify for free school meals. And from the point of view of EHCPs, we've got additional difficulty with our families when we work with them for the children to have educational health care plans. When we talk about EAL Gold Award and things that we do at Handford Hall, the first thing needs to be said is your curriculum and people. Nothing can be done without people that buying into a concept of delivery of a curriculum. And the most important part of that is quality first teaching. You at your schools, you will develop your curriculum, whether there will be schemes or your own bespoke offer. For us, it needed to be a bespoke offer. We could not take a scheme and adapt it, because every single time we've done that, we would have to adapt it on a termly basis. So knowing our curriculum, our journey, how we develop curriculum throughout was really important to understand that we are delivering the curriculum, national curriculum, that meets the needs of all learners. And that's what makes Handford Hall such an exciting place to be. So we are RSC school. We work extremely hard in just prior pandemic with Voice 21. Important for every single child, but particularly for EAL learners to be RSC school. For our main curriculum, we are using the national primary curriculum that give us a global overview and really embraces the contextual knowledge of our students. The new thing that we are using, it's something we call people book study. So if you know Alex Bedford and Unity curriculum, we took part of evaluation of how our children are talking about curriculum and how the knowledge and skills they are gaining is progressive. And children are the best tool to evaluate our curriculum. We are very innovative and creative in our approaches because we have to engage our students from the day one. Hence, mantle of the expert, so teaching topics or teaching subjects within the context. From the point of view of teaching children reading, which is really important, our curriculum is 80% reading. There's no way about that. We've got an hour of reading, an hour and 10 minutes of reading every single day on the top of English. and this is a must. We do read writing. It's one of these things that you either hate it or you love it. I can't decide where I am, but this is working for us really well. And it's really working for our migrant communities, our children that come and go, our mobile communities. We are assessing them every single week, and the progress is phenomenal. Accelerated reader was something that we started using in 2007, and we never looked back. Works really well, and our children are really enthusiastic about reading. If you get your children reading, if they are got passion for reading, they can access the curriculum and they will fly with any subject. If you don't get reading right, this is something that is going to be a barrier for all children. We've got very structured EYFS approach. I'm very much aware that I am primary school, but we are very structured in EYFS, very structured maths and English sessions. There's no time for exploration. It's really exploration for through very careful planning of knowledge and skills and building blocks that the children must have in order to be Key Stage 1 ready. So timing is really important. I was asked to talk about our interventions, and when we think about interventions, I always have got in my mind my first experience of intervention. When I first started in Handford Hall, we had specialist teaching assistants that used to come and take the children, particularly in the afternoon, for a significant amount of time to do interventions. And what we found, the children used to come back to lessons having no clue what was going on in the session. So we tracked several children, and we found out that the children were never in a class. They were constantly pulled by the adult in the most inappropriate times, doing very good interventions, but they were not applying them in lessons. So for us, it was looking at the most relevant and the most effective interventions that are part of our quality first teaching offer. And at that point, we had a really good experience of addressing the full range of beginners in English. Those children that had no English whatsoever, no previous schooling, or they may have some schooling in their schools or in different countries as the families travel, for example, through Europe and they arrive in the UK. So it was really knowing well where the children are and how to motivate them to ensure that we've got them from the moment they come to our school and we can accelerate the progress that they're making in the learning. So for us, it was stripping it back, getting rid of interventions that were time consuming and were showing the least progress, and reverting back to something that we knew works really well, which is pre-teaching and overlearning. So they are the two main parts of our curriculum offer and parts of interventions stroke quality first teaching for all of our learners. How did we came across pre-teaching? So in our school, we provide teaching assistants for every single class, 28 hours, and they are part of the team. So they are working, they become the right hand of the teaching assistant. For us, it was really looking at our budget and investing in people. I cannot stress enough how important people are for EAL learners, for any child. But these adults need to be appropriately trained. And in order for them to be trained, you need to have a really sound knowledge of your curriculum, clear progression of knowledge, of skills, of vocabulary, and building blocks that are non-negotiable per subject, per year group, that the children have to acquire first before they move on. So for us, the pre-teaching was the promotion, the access, allowing children to have access to the curriculum. It was for us to activate the prior knowledge. So every single teacher and the teaching assistant are very well skilled and trained to identify key vocabulary and teach them explicitly. It is really important that our teachers are aware that the children do not acquire a new language by listening and repeating the word. They need to be teaching explicitly the language and the links in between that. For us, every single lesson is a vocabulary lesson. It could be a PE session, it could be computing, it could be art, but every single building block to ensure that our children are cognitively challenged needs to be very carefully planned out and planned progressively. For us, with the pre-teaching, it was spending time with our teaching assistant that do the most of the pre-teaching, anticipating language demands, ensuring that we are teaching to the age appropriate, not to the where the skills of the child that is entering the school. So really scaffolding, teaching to the age appropriate, and then scaffolding with the interventions, with overlearning the gaps. So for us, language structures, which I'm sure some of you will remember Tower Hamlets, like they produce a progression of language structures, which is still a very valuable resource. But our school, Voice 21, developed that even further with sentence stems to ensure that the children understand the way the language is constructed and the expectations per subject and per particular area or genre, the expectations of it. For us, it was providing models of the language that the child will be expected to use, planning very carefully across the whole curriculum, speaking and listening activities. And the one thing that we must never forget, it's modeling and rehearsing. And that's where your teachers, your staff are so important. Modeling at all times and allowing children time to rehearse. So in our school, we've got obviously class teachers that do the pre-teaching and the teaching assistants in the afternoons, and it's very fluid. The frequency, as quickly as possible. The length, maximum 10-15 minutes. So it's really quick introduction either to a topic or to a new concept that allows the children to have a step up. So when the lesson is delivered the following day or the following week, they start at the appropriate level and they're able to acquire new knowledge and skills and feel part of the lesson. So it's a proper inclusiveness in practice. For us, it was development of the vocabulary acquisition with the pre-teaching. So a lot of time and training was spent with teachers in our CPD sessions, our weekly staff meetings, and the same training was provided for our teaching assistants. We realized that sometimes for the children, EAL children in particular, they will have a cognitive overload from different subjects. So it's really looking at the progression of vocabulary per subject and having these non-negotiables, blocks of vocabulary that will allow the children to access the curriculum and progress with the learning. So it's looking at making connections. And I had to use the word offset, but the one thing they got right, it's about making connections. The children have to make connections with vocabulary, and we need to make sure that the connections are right. And the time needs to be given to the curriculum to allow the children to make these connections and then look at the misconceptions. Because as soon as the children will have a minimum of 100 of sight vocabulary in English, they will be making connections, but they will be brave and they will be risk-taking. But there is a risk with that if we do not identify the misconceptions from the start. And that's particularly in the subjects like science, like geography, like computing, using the appropriate language that they are able to communicate in that particular field. So that's an example of overlearning session that the teaching assistant will be having with a child. Overlearning is immediate. So the way the curriculum is structured, the teaching assistants are with the class teacher throughout the whole day, and they can pick up on misconceptions here and there and address them immediately. So there is that importance of closing the loop and clarification of any misconceptions that children may have during the lesson. Most of the overlearning is happening by class teaching assistants, but all our senior leaders, including myself, we were on hands as well. So I support year 6 class, my deputy head supports year 5 and 4s, and my assistant head supports key stage 1. It's really important that we are hands-on and we understand what is happening in our school and how the children are progressing within that. Within overlearning, it is focused on non-negotiable knowledge and skills per lesson. So if we did the pre-teaching right, hopefully there will be less misconceptions in the lesson, but there will be some. And it will be addressing them as quickly as possible to allow that child in the next session, the following day or the following week, to be able to build on that and progress with the learning. And again, the overlearning is 10-15 minutes by the teaching assistant, very carefully planned so that our afternoons are really fluid. That's why it works for the teaching assistant to be assigned to a class teacher, because that teaching assistant knows the children inside out, knows exactly what the misconceptions are, he knows exactly how the children performed in the lesson and what needs to be addressed immediately to allow that child the following day or the following week to move with the learning. Regular AFL, that's happening all the time, and quizzes across the whole curriculum, very visual, just snap, using our guided reading sessions to allow the children to feed back to us and respond through quizzes about the knowledge that they gained and see whether we are ready to move on to a next concept. Within that, there is a feedback that you provide to the children. So you do a lot of feedback orally. So you're modeling language, you have discussions with the children. We also need to be teaching our children, EAL children, independence and resilience. So our marking policy is very clear. It's a very clear learning objective, very clear steps to success that are differentiated and explained to the children. And then the expectation, what is happening in the session. So the examples that you've got in here, this is example of Year 5 child that came to us in the summer term with no English. And by January of Year 5 was able to access fully the whole curriculum. Because the scaffolds that we have provided and overlearning and pre-teaching that took place in Year 4 and at the beginning of Year 5 allowed that child to have the building blocks and move with the learning as quickly as possible. So, for example, the children are able to identify the vocabulary, the new vocabulary, and then there is a discussion in the afternoon with highlighter and discussion whether they use that appropriately. That's where we are clarifying and ensuring that they're using the language appropriately. As you can see on the right-hand side, we provide lots of visuals. We mustn't presume that when we address and introduce vocabulary once and the children got it once, they've got it. They might have got it on that day, that week, but you need to rehearse it over and over again to ensure that it's embedded. Language is amazing thing for our EAL learners, and they are still, for the first 5-6 years, they will be still translating English into their own language. And that will slow the way they are thinking, and it slow the responses. But that also allows us to find what the misconceptions are. So the time needs to be given for an adult and a child to have a real meaningful discussion about the new knowledge and skills and vocabulary that they acquired in the right place, in the right context. So that, again, 5-10 minutes, and that is real reassuring because the child will be able to self-mark and say, actually, I got that right, and I can use that now. People book studies also use us to secure independent children's skills. So if you look again on how we introduce the vocabulary, this is what we are expecting every single child that's non-negotiable to use in the writing or use in the lesson. And that is checked on a regular basis. Again, we wouldn't be able to do that if the teaching assistant and teacher didn't plan really carefully their pre-teaching activities to allow the children to shine and participate and be part of the learning happening in the classroom every single day. Within that, you have got as well your classroom environment, and you will have your own things within the classes. It is important that the classroom environment is vocabulary friendly for the children. And we all know that the things are developing in education, and for the past 5 years, we're all experiencing the way working walls are working. And what we found, the working walls are great if they're really meaningful and they really are aid for the children. If they are just used as a lovely display and never referred to, not enjoying them. Our children actively using working walls because they support the learning, making them independent. If you would come to our school, you would not see children relying on adults. They want to do things on their own. We are utilizing our adults to provide the children with tools to be able to support their resilience and independent skills. So there is not an adult assigned to a child or a group of children. If the teaching assistant is supporting the children with the class, we'll be working with a variety of children because there will be a different focus. But our displays supporting the children with their language and with the new knowledge and skills that they're acquiring in our sessions. So, for example, in English, really meaningful, relevant to the text or genre, really specific. And for our EAL learners, what we found, you need to show them the end product. You need to show them what they're aspiring to, what potential biography, suspense story, a formal letter looks like. For EAL learners, they're also visual, so they need to be able to see what they're aiming at. For maths, it's concrete knowledge and skills that are able to apply throughout. And that is obviously covered through pre-teaching overlearning, but your working walls are similar to all the children at all times. Very interestingly, our year 5 and 6 children, particularly in maths, they don't want working walls. They want methods, and they want that stay there for longer, because by that time they've got knowledge and skills, and they just want to remind themselves, okay, so how do I convert mixed numbers into improper fractions? How do I do factors? How do I do algebra? Let me just have a look. That's what it is. It's just a prompt for them to be able to do that. We are listening to our children. They tell us what supports their learning. So you've got examples of our working walls modeled by teachers all the time. Our expectations, model language, model tenses, model vocabulary, age appropriate for that particular year group. If we are spending an hour and 10 minutes on reading, the children must love reading, must be enthusiastic, but we need to recognize that as well within our displays that support the children and become a drive. So that is, our children do a word millionaire, and they really want to change and take new books and go to chapter books and read a variety of books. They're really hungry, and they've got proper passion and love for reading. You could see that across that, for example, our Key Stage 1 displays. When we were talking about our interventions, we always said nothing will work apart from quality first teaching. When you've got teachers that buying into the way you teach in your school, the way you deliver the curriculum, the children will have the best possible time to narrow the gaps, learn English, and have access to the curriculum. And these aspects are really important. Building on the previous experience, when the children come to us, we've got very clear induction process and assessments on entry to know exactly where they are. And the first thing we say to these children when they come to us, I know you've got a fabulous spark in you, you need to show us. And these children know from the moment they come to us, they're valued. And we know that where they are, before they start coming to our school and going to classes, their transition needs to be as smooth as possible to ensure that they are hungry for learning and they want to be in school when they feel part of it from day one. So if you look at the left-hand side, so you've got building on previous experience, activating prior knowledge, using bilingual strategies, not forgetting that it's so important for them to be able to express themselves in their own language, creating shared experiences, and then obviously ensuring that the context and the curriculum represents the children that you have got. So it's that bespoke offer. And then scaffolding language and providing that differentiation and your interventions like pre-teaching and overlearning that supports every single learner in your school. So for us, if I would say what makes the biggest difference is addressing the social and emotional development, having your really understanding where the children are coming from and having really clear assessment on entry and really clear expectations to the parent and to a child, and knowing what child is able to do, not focusing on what they can do and really holding on to it. Then looking at cognitive development, so making sure that the curriculum is still meeting the needs of all the learners. Then looking at the language and the prior knowledge, because when you get that right, you will get the attainment. When you get the attainment, the progress will be phenomenal. For us...
Sorry, Kasha, can I just ask you to bring it to a close?
Yes.
Because we're about 10 minutes over. It's fascinating, but we really want to hear from the others as well.
I'll put in here in order, and you will have that PowerPoint, the things that work for overlearning and pre-teaching the best. So activities that really support the children's learning and clarify the misconceptions. So matching, labeling, sorting, annotating, classifying across all the curriculum. And not forgetting, always asking open questions for all the learners in your interventions. Never close questions. Our EAL learners are clever and they want to learn. By asking them open questions, you cognitively challenge them all the time. Time given for rehearsals all the time, making sure that the children, EAL children, have got time to rehearse. Simple things. Don't print things off. Use whiteboards. Really fabulous tool to be able to do that for overlearning and pre-teaching. Thinking time for all. Model speaking and listening at all time and corrector. Writing frame with the people book study and frames. Word taxonomy really build. EAL learners really understand words and want to learn about them. Model writing. And you've got more things in here. That's it. I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to you later and hear more. We're now going to move on to Maria. So, yeah, great.
Hi.
Over to you, Maria.
Thank you, Graham. Hello, everyone. Like Kasha, I work in Ipswich, and I also started at this school in 2021, same academic year, and I work in a local high school from the same area where Kasha is based, and I've been a EAL coordinator for nearly 10 years now. But obviously I've been at school for a long time. I also am EAL, so I have an accent too. Again, like Kasha, I know exactly what the children need and what, how to support them. I will now share my screen. I don't know if you can see that slideshow. Right, so I am, sorry. So I'm currently the SLE for Suffolk as well. So I do quite a lot of things outside school as well as in school. And I've been, as I said, the EAL lead here for a long time. I'm a middle leader, so I'm not a head teacher or a senior leader. I'm middle leader, and I teach maths rather than languages. But I also support languages for the home languages exams. So first thing, why did I choose to do the EAL Quality Mark? Well, there's three reasons really. First of all, I wanted a little bit of recognition for the work we're doing at Westbourne. The progress of our students, for example, if you look at the school data, is actually better than the British students. We have, like Kasha, a high mobile population with new arrivals arriving to school daily, just like Kasha has. I have 3 more next week, I think, and after that we'll be full. So, you know, there's not much talk about EAL, I think, in general. They removed that from the Ofsted inspection as well. So in the past, you know, there was that little recognition during the Ofsted that would say, oh, EAL provision is good. Obviously now that's gone. So having doing the EAL Quality Mark really gave some recognition to myself and my team, but also the staff and the departments that obviously host the EAL children in their lessons. Also, I wanted some guidance. As I'm sure you all know, there's very little guidance out there. Everything is, you know, entirely really up to the school and how best fits the school, which is great. But if you don't have any training, or if you're new to the role, or if you've been doing for a long time, you don't know, you know, you like to have some guidance, some advice. I felt that was very useful, you know, to have sort of an external pair of eyes who has good understanding of the EAL world to look at the provision and sort of what we can improve, and obviously giving me ideas for areas to improve. What else can I work on in regards to our provision? Obviously, our main issue at the moment is lack of staff. So, you know, we're trying our best, but we're missing quite a lot of staff. I found the process very helpful. For a high school, it wasn't that onerous. Obviously, you have to have the time off with the meeting and do a little bit of the work. But obviously, most of my work was done on the day with Graham rather than preparing a big folder. So I thought that was quite kind of Graham. Obviously, with, you know, all high schools are different, all schools are different. You might not have the time. But I think that meeting was very helpful. I also had a pre-meeting to have some sort of suggestion on how to plan the EAL Quality Mark, and I found it really useful, and I've you know, I've used that as a subject improvement plan for myself, so that's very helpful. Another area I was asked to present on, obviously, actually before I move on, a little bit about my school. We have about, in fact it's changed now, it's 35%. I only did this slide last week, so you can see how mobile population is. We have 45 languages, high mobility, high SEN. A lot of our students are Romani students with no previous schooling, or refugees and asylum seekers without previous schoolings, because as refugees, obviously currently we have quite a lot of refugees from Ukraine, but also from Afghanistan, and we host also a few accompanying asylum seekers. I have my own team, so my EAL team is individual. I run it along teaching maths as well as teaching maths. And I obviously am independent from SEND or from languages and from English. Obviously, each school is different, but from our school, that's what works best. I have 3 dedicated TAs and 2 vacancies for full-time HLTAs. So as you can see, we are desperate need for staff. I'm a qualified teacher, obviously. I've been teaching for quite a long time. I also have a SENCO qualification, and I did Graham's EAL qualification as well. Again, that was quite useful for sort of getting ideas and learning more about EAL. Now, what our provision looks like, probably from this slide you can tell I teach maths, is quite plain, but that's the kind of provision that we're offering currently. So obviously EAL in our school is quite different from some aspects, different anyway. Obviously you always have to work with the families. I do all the admission meetings on the mid-year arrivals. I link with the primaries, obviously Kasha schools, but also all the other primary schools, where if I can, I go and meet the parents before they join Westbourne. I obviously have got a guide to the school, so especially for EAL students, I have a mobile phone where, you know, they can contact me and so on. I have some grants. I try to get grants from outside to provide uniform and equipment. I organise parents' coffee mornings as well. And actually, I have now on my timetable a weekly drop-in for parents, from anything from food to work. I do quite a lot of staff training, and outside school and inside school for Suffolk, for other schools. I do teacher training for different providers. I link with the post-16 providers as well as the primary schools, and so that all our new arrivals also attend college after. I do quite a lot of work with the pastoral team in terms of attendance and safeguarding, mentoring. I do all the all the paperwork for the looked after and accompanied. I've also obviously been a teacher and a middle leader. I work with the other middle leaders. So for example, we've got an induction for newly arriving students, which is designed together with the other team leaders. Well, they've told me what they need to cover. Obviously, I offer TA support, having my own specialist TAs, and a little bit like Kasha, I put the TAs in the class. Obviously, being a high school is slightly different. And so, you know, my TAs have got a focus on specific children for a specific amount of time, just to give them that confidence. And again, a bit like Kasha, we place our students in the right ability group, despite, regardless of their proficiency in English. I think Graham witnessed that. You know, he saw a top set in English, and there were quite a lot of EAL students actually. But again, if that's necessary, then we do a bit of interventions. Our interventions are all pre-teaching and reteaching, as well as reading, just like Kasha does. And for sort of newly arrived students and Key Stage 3 students, my TAs do that, but for Key Stage 4, I do those, and I do quite a lot of reteaching and pre-teaching of English and maths. I also do the home languages exams. I coordinate them. This year we've got 6 different languages, GCSEs. I work a lot with the outside agencies. Obviously, last year I became one of the governors for Handford Hall. I'd like to be more active in that, but obviously Kasha knows, but we always communicate when we can. So now, and I think another issue I've been asked to talk to you about is all the changes over time and the challenging circumstances. So I don't know if you know how, the history a little bit about EAL, and now EAL became separate from SEND. But basically, when I started teaching, which is a long time ago now, EAL was part of special needs. It was included in SEN. It was one of the needs, and then eventually is quickly evolved, and in 2014 it became officially separate from EAL and SEND were separated by the SEND Code of Practice, where it states quite clearly on there that EAL is not a learning need as such, and not a learning disability. Now, obviously, EAL, first of all, the EAL population is highly mobile. That makes it very, very challenging because our population changes constantly over time. And sometimes we have returning students. So especially we have a big Roma population, just like Handford Hall, and we have pupils who go back to Romania or Bulgaria and miss 2 years of school and then come back. And that's massively challenging. And again, obviously I'm lucky enough to be obviously a team leader. I've got the same timetable as a SENCO, and therefore I can then intervene with those students where they can. I teach an option, a Key Stage 4, where I cover those gaps when the students have missed a chunk of schools. This area is very poor in terms of, economically poor, and there's quite a lot of economic deprivation. So there's quite there's lack of resources for the families. So obviously, a lot of my role is to find resources to support my role and support the students. I've put down the dates which I felt had a massive impact on our school. 2012, I wasn't the EAL lead at the time, the SENCO was, because we're still together, and we had, let's just say, a very negative review from the provision as it was at the time. 2012 is when migrants from the Eastern Europe, the Schengen, joined Schengen. So we all of a sudden had a massive influx of newly arrived migrants. We always had migrants, as Kasha said, from Bangladesh and the Punjab as well. But in 2012, we had a huge influx of newly arrived Polish students who were placed in the wrong ability groups and so on. After that, in 2014, my head at the time decided to have an independent EAL team, and I was made EAL Coordinator and worked separately from the SEN team. And that's where really I started working with Kasha, because I had no idea being a maths about languages as such. So she was an inspiration, really. And I went around her school. She offered quite a lot of support, and that's where things started to change for the children at Westbourne. And obviously, the following Ofsted, we got quite a good review, quite good comments about the EAL provision. Another day, obviously, I didn't put it on there. It's 2016 Brexit. Obviously, I assumed there'd be difference, no more, fewer migrants. But actually, the migrants' population has still kept up. So it's not the mobility has not changed. I was assuming the mobility would change, but it hasn't at all. And in 2014, I had quite a small team. It was mainly myself. And by 2016, I had 2 full-time HLTA, a teacher, apart from myself, and the 3 TAs. Obviously, the teacher retired, the HLTAs moved away, got a promotion, and obviously my school, COVID hit in 2020, and so my senior leadership team, we had a discussion, and I said, I don't know, maybe we don't need so much staff. We weren't sure. but obviously after that, those members of staff have not been replaced for because of COVID, but also because of a lack of applicants. Our biggest challenge, but I'm assuming for everyone, was COVID. Obviously, the EAL role completely changed in those 2 years. During those 2 years, I'm sure that was for everyone. My role became more of a pastoral support role. I did home visits 2 days a week for the whole day, just to support students to log in, families and not knowing what to do. A lot of families going abroad and staying abroad for the duration of the pandemic, so having to liaise. So again, my role there changed completely. It was more a pastoral role than a teaching role. Obviously, I had to do my maths lesson online as well as that, but I did quite a lot of that. And 2023, that's where we're at now. As I said, quite challenging because of lack of staff, and our numbers are going up. They're not lowering in any way, but the needs are different. As Kasha says as well, the needs are constantly changing, and you need to know your students. So obviously, I've got being a team leader and having sort of middle leader role, I've got that opportunity of sharing information with all staff. And finally, I work a lot with people in my area. So it's not just Kasha I work with. So I've established like an EAL pyramid a little bit. So I work very closely to this primary school next door, which is called White House. We do some activities together relating to transition, but also the EAL Coordinator at White House speaks Russian. So for example, she helps me with the Russian GCSEs. I've done several projects with another school near. So for example, I applied from some opportunity areas funding, and we did some visits in different schools. I applied for another project, and again, I tried to involve all the local schools. I think Kasha took part in that. We looked at the Roma populations in Romania. So I had some teachers from Romania coming over and did a big meeting with local stakeholders. I go into in our local area, EAL provision in high school is not particularly great because especially since the change in Ofsted, in the Ofsted framework, and some schools don't have a teacher EAL coordinator. In fact, most schools in Ipswich don't. So I work a lot with, we've got a little network of high schools, and I go and support them. The last thing I've done is a language assessment for a Russian student, but I also go and look at the provision and give advice on what, how to set up EAL provision from scratch. I've done a lot of work with another local schools, and local high schools has never had any EAL students, but now they have 5 Ukrainian refugees. So obviously they had no expertise in their school in terms of that. I've worked with, I work with the local council quite a lot. So I think a couple of weeks I'm working with the health service. They're looking into the health of the Roma population in Ipswich. So they want some input from myself. I try to take part in the Suffolk, the local authority EAL network. That's not always possible, and it's mainly primary based. But again, the lady leading, she's been given this job of leading, but again, with very, she's trying to, get people together. I do teacher training as well. So I work with the local teacher training providers. And I offer placements for students who are interested in EAL. I think last year was my most successful year. 5 of the new trainees have now become EAL coordinators elsewhere. So that's quite good. I work with the police. I'm currently started a project with the police regarding forced marriages, because a lot of our cultures are at risk of that. So we're designing a project involving parents and students, boys and girls separate. So and I'm trying to involve people from the community, the local Roma community, to take part in that as well. The police, and then obviously attendance at the moment is my biggest issue. So I'm working alongside the attendance team at school, and we're looking at doing home visits and checking on reasons for attendance. And well, that's it really. If you have any questions, that's my detail. If you want to keep in touch, that's it.
Thank you very much, Maria, for that. It's a wonderful description of just how much an EAL coordinator has to do in some circumstances. We might come back when we get to questions a bit more to the kind of how you spread good practice in Ipswich. But if I can turn now to Alka from Featherstone High School. And she can tell you about.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah.
Do things.
Okay. I'm going to just try to share my screen, but I think I've lost you now, so let me just minimize it for a second. Sorry.
Yeah, you're still a co-host.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Sorry, I had to find which screen I was sharing. So a little bit about the school. So the process, the reason we applied for the EAL mark is we've got 84% of our school population is bilingual, okay, and that is increasing. And we just wanted to audit our provisions. So one of the things that we did was when we applied for the EAL mark, I got Graham to come in to do a consultancy visit where he visited quite a few lessons. He also spoke to lead teachers and teachers. So we could gather information from all these different participants to find out what is working and what isn't, because we wanted to develop our provisions even further. And that included talking to students as well. And then following from that, I created an action plan, because I'm also part of the senior management team. So I have an overview of I don't just line manage SEM because I'm a Senko, but I also line manage EAL at the same time. So one of the things I did, and then shared with SLT, was an action plan following on from the visit. And one of the things we actually did look at is to get Claire to come in to do training with whole school training on EAL. A lot of our teachers were very concerned that we had a lot of students coming in-year students who came in with no English whatsoever, and they were very concerned about how they could support students in the classroom. So that kind of then followed on from what we did. So our largest ethnic group is Asian British, sorry, my screen's gone that side, so I have to read from there, and Black, British, and African and Asian. But what I was saying to Graham was, we've seen a change in the number of students that are coming into school. So before, our highest population was Somali speakers, but now what we found, and I don't know if that's to do with Brexit or not, is that we've got a lot of Goan students coming into the school. And also we've got a lot of refugees that have come from Afghanistan as well. We have 39 languages spoken in the school, and we have the highest deprivation factor. So we live in Southall Green. So many of our families come from where, in terms of employment, there are a lot of people that are not employed, or in terms of being able to access some of the facilities or in the community, they find that quite difficult. So we support our parents in that area as well. So despite the fact that we have 84% EAL students in the school, our attainment continues to be good. And I'm just going to bring that up for you there. So in 2021, our GCSE attainment score was high, in the top 30% in England, and our progress rate was in the first top 16%. And our progress rate for this year, again, has remained as it was, plus 80. And then obviously you can see the rest of the information. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was our pastoral care. So as I was saying earlier on, we have a lot of students who come into school and they've traveled, they've seen some horrific things, so a lot of trauma. So they've traveled through different countries to get to us. And we have a lot of children in our school who have either come with one parent or unaccompanied minors. So therefore, it's very important that our pastoral system supports these students. And so therefore, in our pastoral system, each head of year, in each year group, we have a head of year and a deputy head of year. Attached to that year group also, we have our learning mentors, and we also have our teaching assistants as well. So one of the things that we do, we have a flow chart, which I've just put up there, is that as soon as we know that students are coming in, our administrators will alert our heads of year, because it's really important that the students see the person that they're going to see on a daily basis in the playground or around the school. And what they do is they interview not just a parent, but also students together, and they collate all that information about their background. Not all of our students come straight into the school. Sometimes they go to other schools, and then they slowly on our waiting list filter back into our school as well. So we have an induction, we have 2 induction programs. So one of the ones that when Graham came, he spoke to us about that, and he was saying, well, apart from your EAL induction, what is your pastoral induction like? So we kind of looked at what we had in place, and we just adapted a little bit. So what we've ensured now is that when the students come in, not only are they greeted with the head of year will go through all the information with them. So they will take them around a tour of the school. They'll take them to, parent pay. How do you use parent pay? How do you access Google Classroom? The parents are also shown how to, because obviously we've gone, we use parent pay, so my brain's gone there. We use parent pay, so they know how to access and top up the money as well. One of the other things we do is that the heads of year liaise with the tutors, and we have 2 buddies. Originally we only had 1, but we now have 2 buddies. So what we do is we try to buddy up a student with one that speaks the same language, and also another buddy that will model spoken English to the students as well. And that the students will follow those buddies around the school, and also they will feed back to the heads of year. So the heads of year will try, it's not only speak to the child, but also to their buddy to see how they're getting on, and if there are any concerns. What we also do is our pastoral leads are also teachers as well, and so are our support staff, and they're bilingual. So therefore, if students are struggling, they will speak to them in their mother tongue, or they will ask, we also have a translator. So one of the things that we do have an issue with is we have a lot of students that come from Afghanistan, but we don't have any staff on, any member of staff on our team that speaks Farsi or Pashto. So what we've done recently is we've brought it into a platform which will translate. So before the parents come, what we'll try to do is to find out if they need a translator, and then we will use the translation service as well. One of the things that what we also have, and I'm sure it's in all schools, is that our heads of year and our deputy heads and our learning mentors are always on duty. So in the morning, they're on duty. So the students, as they come to the gate, they'll see someone they recognise. At break time, lunchtime, and after school, they're on duty. So in a way, what our pastoral team does is that they nurture the students. They're the first point of contact besides the tutor. And what will also happen is our heads of year, as in any school, will see that year group through. So what we do is that they'll be in the playground. They'll ensure that the student that has just come into the school will ensure that their buddy is with them. And if the buddy isn't with them, they'll ensure that there is someone with them at break time, lunchtime, at all times. Also, they'll ensure that our students, that they know how to use the system in terms of accessing, being able to buy their food. So one of our tutors noticed that one of her students that had just come into the school, she was on duty, and she realized that he wasn't eating. She never saw him eating at all. So what she then did is she spoke to the head of year, and then when we actually looked into his account, we saw that that he wasn't having lunch. So that was a big concern for us. So then we contacted parents. We tried to find out why he wasn't having food, but he was. It's just we found out that his friends were sharing food with him or buying food. So when we found out that he wasn't quite sure how to purchase food, we showed him how to do that. Also, I was going to say to you, in terms of our students, we monitor them throughout the day. We'll make sure our heads of year will go into the classrooms. They'll talk to the students, but they'll also talk to the teachers as well. And if there are any concerns, they'll feed back to the assistant head teacher as well for that year group. Our students also, we have a lot of events where they can celebrate their achievements. So we have assemblies, so a lot of our students will take part in our assemblies. We've got something which I haven't got an image here of called the FHS5, and therefore our students will deliver assemblies which are calendared, which will talk about respect, which might look at challenge, resilience, and our students are involved in that. So each tutor has to make sure that everyone in the class participates. So it's all about equal access, and we ensure that our pastoral system supports the students so they feel comfortable, especially a lot of our students who have come to this country with no parents and are in care as well. So we do that, and we then have also progress evenings where students will receive a certificate for progress they are making. Now, in our EAL policy, it's stated that every teacher is a teacher of EAL students, and this is a snippet that I've just taken from the policy itself. We've also, sorry, I need to go back a little bit. We've actually appointed an EAL governor as well, which we didn't have before. So we had an SEN governor, but we also have an EAL governor as well, and which I'll talk about a bit later on. But our EAL governor, during when we have our governors meetings, I will always report back to them about the progress that our students are making, especially our EAL cohort as well. So I won't read through all of this with you, but what we have done is that we've ensured that our teachers are equipped with a handful of strategies that they can use in the classroom. And as I said earlier on, they have to ensure that those students are able to access the learning. So sometimes what we've got state-of-the-art technology, so we have lots of computers around the school. So some of our students, teachers will allow students to use the Google Classroom translator, so they can access the information. Some of our teachers have also translated some information to students as well. But as I said to you, we also have buddies where they are speaking to students in their mother tongue, but also modelling at the same time spoken language, spoken English. And a lot of our TAs are bilingual. So I think the two speakers were speaking earlier on, as I'm the Senko, I ensure also that all our TAs are attached to the different classes. And so therefore, where a student is struggling, either the teacher or the TA will speak to them in the home language and then model back in English as well to them as well. And we have, one of the things that we've been really pushing for is, and it is working really well, we've trained our teachers to live scaffold. So we've given them lots of strategies that they can use, and their teaching is very flexible in terms of that as well. Okay, so I'm going to talk about our SDP. So we've ensured in our SDP that, I know EAL and SEN are kept separate, but in our SDP, they appear together. So therefore, we've ensured that every lead teacher, when they are developing their department development plan, that they look at the strategies they're using to support the EAL students. So they are in their program, what are they doing? Does their curriculum allow students to have equal access? Lead teachers are responsible for training staff as well, so to share good practice of modelling, scaffolding strategies. At the same time, I'm going to go to this screen to see it a bit better. And at the same time, we carry out learning walks and development observations as well. And that's a cycle that happens throughout the year. Our teaching and learning, so what we did this year, not this year, the previous year, we looked at our form and we started to think about, well, how can we ensure our teachers are focusing on our EAL students? And we do have a large number of SEN students who are also EAL, so that's why they're put together. And what we have done is, I'm part of the teacher developer team as well. So what we did, we put together some questions that we want the teachers and also lead teachers to think about. So this form, which was developed as part of the deep dive, was that the teacher developer with the key stage coordinator and lead teacher got together and spoke about, well, if I go into this classroom, what am I going to see? What am I going to see your teachers doing for those EAL learners in the classroom? So it was really homing down on what the lead teacher had to focus on. And then they would have to explain what they would see in the classroom and explain the strategy they're using. And we have something called the FHS5, which is up there, which, it's about modelling, challenge, scaffold, sequencing, All those things are there, so therefore they have to focus on that as well. Then during the observation itself, after the discussion has taken place, during the observation that will take place again, the focus will be on what has been discussed. And as you can see, the observer will comment on what is there and what they are seeing. Now, it may be the case that when they have to come up with a priority, you know, when the lead teacher collates all that information from the observations, they may identify the fact that they need to look at, as a department as a whole, strategies that they are going to use to support their EAL learners. So this is continuous. We continuously review our teaching and learning policy to ensure that our EAL learners are always focused on, and therefore they are the responsibility of the classroom teacher and not the responsibility of the EAL coordinator. What I forgot to mention is that we do have an EAL coordinator. We're lucky this year, she's only teaching EAL students, so we do have an induction program. But what we do ensure is that it's a 6 weeks induction program. We then monitor our students, see what progress they're making. They do not come out the same lesson as like the other two schools. All the teaching of our EAL students is through wave 1 teaching. So therefore, teachers need to adapt their lessons to ensure that the student can have equal access as well. So what we also do, and this is as I talked about this, as I come back to this. So one of the things that we do in terms of our tracking. So this is an example from our year 11. So our data, AHT in charge of data, what he will do, he will collate all the information about students. And you'll see just here at the top, we've actually now added columns for EAL Band A, B and C students. And the reason we've done this is we've ensured that our teachers on their spreadsheet know that who are these students. And there is an EAL register where the coordinator has given some information about the students and strategies that can be employed to support the students in the classroom. And as the students come in, she also creates profiles that the teachers have to look at. So this is presented to SLT, and then what happens is that the SLT in charge of the specific departments will have those discussions, you know, with their lead teachers, homing in on the information and then looking at, I mean, obviously this one's a good one where there's lots of green, so students are making a lot of progress. But where there are concerns, they will start talking about, well, who are these students? Why are they underachieving? And what are you doing to support the students to make progress? And these booklets are created for year 9, 10 and 11, 12 and 13, and they're after every data drop. So that's 3 times in a year. The lead teachers then what they have to do is to drill down even further, and they will have discussions with their teachers, and they will want to know, right, they will identify students in their classroom that are not making progress, and they'll have discussions with the teachers as to why are they not making progress, what strategies are you using to support those students. And so therefore they have to write detailed reports for the head teacher. From that, the head teacher will then meet with the lead teachers to discuss the progress students are making, and in this case they will have to talk about the progress our EAL SEN students are making, and then what are the next step forward to ensure that they start making progress. I kept it really short because I was told I was going to have 6 slides, so people can ask me questions if they want to after the discussion.
Thank you for keeping it so short. Okay. As you missed 1 or 2 things you could have said out that I really liked about the school, I'm going to say them.
Okay.
One of the things that struck me, and I spent a lot of time talking to the young people there, is the only word you can use to describe what those students feel about their school is love. They adore being there. They feel they really belong. And the other thing you didn't say, of course, is that your school has amazing outcomes at the age of 16. And that includes some of those who arrive in year 7 with very little English. So the things you do, I think work extremely well. So we've got a little bit of time for questions now. And there's a question I want to ask Kasha, as I can't see any in the chat at the moment. I think I'm allowed to. Kasha, are you there?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay, right. One of the things I remember about coming to your school is so when you showed the kind of language, the ethnicity data, I thought, yeah, it has changed a bit since then, because I don't think you had as many Roma, but you had two quite big groups who stood out, who lived very close to the school. And as you said, those parents work, and quite a lot of them worked in the same place, so much so that the company used to send 2 buses to come and pick them up. What did you do about the buses?
Well, I didn't like the buses. So I went to the agency and I was really, I was pleading with them to say that, you know, we want these families to be contributing to the economy, but they're not going to contribute to the economy if they are just in one place, gathered together, speaking the same language, and there is no provision. They're not assimilating, they're not learning English. So they will never have opportunities to choose a job. The job chooses them because the only thing they can do. I went to every single one in Ipswich, and I was pleading with them because physically there were buses arriving to the same factory, the same chicken factory, with their ethnicity written down at the top. And I said, this is not inclusion. This is not going to work. You need to ensure that these people are recognized by what they're able to do, but inclusion and assimilation is really important. I don't know whether they listen to me, but the buses are no longer there.
I think they did listen to you, and there are no longer buses with "this is the Romanian bus" written on them.
Yes.
This is the Polish bus.
Yes.
And I think that's just a good example of how schools are centrally placed if they're brave enough to challenge what's going on in their communities and try and make them much more inclusive places. Now, I'm just having a look at the questions. And we've got one from Leander, which says, DFE guidance is if children come from an English-speaking country as their official language, they are not classed as international new arrivals for discounting reasons exams. Do you still class them as international arrivals on your school system, and are they still regardless of exam concessions? I'm not sure that I completely agree that that's what the guidance says. Because I think the guidance has a very, very open definition of language, which is leading us towards actually stopping using the term EAL and starting to talk about multilingual learners, which I think would be much more helpful. Yes, there are issues around exam regulations, and sometimes not recognizing that students have not been here very long. But yes, I think what's implicit in the question is, yes, you should just treat them and do the best thing you can for them, whatever label the system puts on them. So, okay, I can't see any other questions. Actually, lots of people saying thank you. So I just want to kind of try and bring us to a conclusion by saying that Maria's talked a bit about the work she does with other schools. I know you do work with other schools as well. So can you tell us a bit about that? Kasha?
Is it me? Oh, sorry.
Yep,
yes. So as Maria, we work very closely with ITTs, so the training skit students. So we organize the whole day in-school course that we spend a lot of time looking at pedagogy and looking at interventions and looking at how the EAL learners learn. But actually the most important is going to classes and observing lessons and being part of the teaching and learning process that is happening in the classroom. And that has been absolutely a must. You can teach theory, you can talk about it, but you need to see it in practice. And the one thing that we are getting from the student teachers for any visitors is when they come to us, we can't see EAL students. What do you mean you can't? They are learners that happen to have to speak 2, 3, 4 languages, which is absolutely fantastic. And they're learning the 5th one, which is English. Inclusion in practice is a must. So these courses we do on a termly basis. We train thousands and thousands of students, teachers, teaching assistants across primary and secondary school. We provide peer reviews as well. So so anybody that is interested in how the school embraces new arrivals and how quickly getting them to make accelerated progress. So we're inviting schools to spend 2 or 3 days with us on a peer review. So we look at a particular aspect of the curriculum and we have a proper professional dialogue with being in classes, talking to the teachers, talking to the children, which is extremely valuable. The best CPD ever, which is that when you get professionals together, they're in a classroom with the children and really dissecting and analysing the best possible route to get the children where we need to get them. I provide lots of webinars and I'm a speaker in the different national conferences from the point of EAL. But I always say that, yes, I might be talking about EAL. What I'm talking about is quality first teaching. And I don't care whether it's EN, EAL, SEND, whichever child it is. It is quality first teaching for all, for every single child in my setting. And that's the most important because we get inclusion right, all the children will feel valued and they will make exceptional progress. So, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we are around the time we said we stop at. So I'm going to try and answer 2 questions, one of which is very easy from Rebecca. Can you have my email? Yes, it's graham.smith@theealacademy.co.uk. I think it is on the slides that we'll send you afterwards as well. But you had another interesting question there about digital resources. Does anyone use digital learning platforms? And that question is a lot harder to ask than it used to be, because my answer used to be very simple. Is children just need to talk. And that is the basis of everything else. If you have well-structured talk, the rest comes. What's happened recently is that translation software has developed exponentially and is now very good. So I think we probably do need to use that. In fact, on Alka's first slide, if you look carefully at the bottom, it has got that bit that tells you that PowerPoint will do simultaneous translation for you, which is incredibly helpful. And the quality of the translation just keeps getting better and better. Translation tools used to be pretty unhelpful unless you knew the language well and you could check it. But now you can rely on it a bit more. So I think that's helpful. I think most of the other things I mean, maybe AutoDraw I can see uses for, but most of the packages that I see, I know some people use Lexia, and I think that just gets in the way of learning, to be honest. It might analyze things and give you a nice little test result, but nothing you don't know if you know the student about how well they can do. So yeah, use the things that are helpful, but trust yourself and your professional judgments. More than you can trust that, more than you can trust any online learning platform, I think. So can I just do a big thanks to all 3 of our speakers who've given up their time, told us about the fantastic things that happen in their schools. We've had about 30 people here today. There are at least another 65 who I know as soon as we send them the link to the recording will be looking at it, and many more will go and look at it. So the good things that we've heard about today will spread. And that's really why we do these webinars. We just want people to know that there is really good practice out there. And that's the best thing to learn from. Not from the things that arrive in your inbox trying to sell you a bit of software. So thank you all for coming. We have got another webinar planned for June that we'll let everybody have details about, because we've got some more schools that we think are fantastic that we need to share with you when we get the chance in June. So thanks very much, everyone. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you've got more questions, by all means, send them to us. We hope to see a lot of you again in June. And most of all, thank you to our 3 wonderful speakers.